Well, here we are on the inaugural afternoon of our event down at the Gables Hotel. Our first Intersound sort of separate show to our main one in November each year. And we're very, very fortunate to have Mr. Thomas Blug with us this afternoon.
Hi.
Who's going to take us through the Blug AMP1.
Yeah. Hi, it's a pleasure for me to be here. And finally, I made it to the UK, to this lovely shop, Intersound, Dursley. And, well, I'm a guitar player for all my life, basically. Actually, my first hobby was electronics when I was 11. But, you know, after my first little experiments, I tried also out to play the guitar, and I discovered the guitar was even more exciting to me. But the rest of my life I have done only the two things, like playing the guitar and doing experiments. I'm not a proper engineer, I'm not even a studied technician, I'm not a studied musician or anything. I just made my hobby into my profession, and here we go. And you know, I had this dream of making a guitar amp that is lightweight. You know, I have all the nice good old Marshalls, Fenders and Voxes, and you know, the amps that my heroes play, and I used them in my early days. I used them when I did session work in studio, and I know the beauty of the tone of it. But when you have to lug around your gear yourself, you will find out it's no big fun having 4x12 cabinets, you know.
That's right, we all like the sound of them, but we don't want to cart them about, that's the trouble.
Yeah, and years ago I bought my first convertible, and there's simply no room for it. I had one studio gig I've done for Stuart Copeland, the drummer in the Police. He hired me as a session player, and this was the last time I brought a real proper 4x12 into a studio, because I wasn't sure if he would like to see a guitar player without it. So I had the full show prepared just for him. So I had to take the roof off, get the 4x12 in, close the roof up, and go to Düsseldorf to the studio. But besides that, you know, I play smaller gear.
Yes.
And well, the AMP1 is a 100-watt amp that is 1.2 kilograms only, and it's all analog, which means guitar in, speaker out, no conversion, no latency, nothing. And it has a preamp section with like 4 separate channels. I do share a 3-band EQ with all the with all the 4 channels, but I do have some tiny little adjustment options for the individual channels on the side.
Yep.
But the main point is, you know, it's all analog, and it sounds like the amps that I know sound good, which are the real good old tube amps. And even if it's not 100% like them, it's at least 98%.
I was going to say. Well, I swapped over to it last October for the sheer reason that, yes, it did everything that I wanted to in something a lot lighter than I was carting around. Yeah. So it was a no-brainer for me.
And the other idea I had is this thing goes on a pedal board.
Yes.
So you know, my personal setup used to be a big multi-channel head tube, 13 tubes, and I had my big pedal board, and I had my cabinet, and I had my guitar. And going back and to the guitar to the car and get my gear out meant always at least 2 turns. With this, I have my pedal board with the amp on the pedal board. I have my cabinet on the other hand, and the guitar on the back. It's only one go.
Yes.
This was my dream. And well, this AMP1 is part of this dream. And maybe I can explain a little bit about the basic features.
Yes, of course.
Well, guitar players are a special species. Some want it simple, they're very traditional, and others go a bit crazy on options. Okay, so most Germans think about options. Technology is very important to them, but I think guitar playing is always about keep it simple.
Yeah.
So I try to make it as simple as possible for each type.
Yes.
And so the basic operation of AMP1 is simply, it's a 2-channel. It's clean overdrive, and you pre-select one of your overdrive channels, which is vintage, classic or modern. And vintage is like a classic 60s overdriven British sound. Classic is more like the 80s version of that.
Mm-hmm.
And modern is in between American and is high gain.
Yeah. More of the metal-y type sounds.
Metally, if you dial in this tone control on the one side,
Yep.
and it can go also like a Soldano type, very sweet sound with the same channel on the other side.
Right.
So one tiny little thing here is these little trim pods, they blend between 2 tone stacks. On the one side is one tone stack, on the other side is another tone stack, preset by myself.
Yeah.
And by that, the tone stack gives the character gives a lot of character to the channel. Only with that I can match all the 4 different channels to one master tone control. And the master tone control here is kind of it doesn't influence. The controls don't influence each other, which is the case on a classic tone stack.
Yep.
It's like a you know, the thing when you have more trouble, you automatically lose some mids and stuff like this, which is, some people get it, other people have a lot of difficulties to adjust it. This tone control is very simple. You dial in mids, you get those mids, and you have more treble or less treble, but anything else will remain totally the same.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I have this kind of clean overdrive switch here, pre-select one of the channels. I have an internal boost. The boost is adjustable with this here. And little detail here again, the boost is a 2-stage boost. So if I crank this, the first stage of the boost automatically drives the second stage of the boost and makes some overtones, which makes the sound creamy.
Mm-hmm.
And if I have it only like halfway, it is clean all the way through. So it changes the character. And actually this little pot here connects 2 trim pods. The guitar player just dials the knobs, gets the sound.
It's the same.
I try to keep it simple.
Right.
So, adjustable boost. And there's a reverb. The reverb is spring type reverb, switch on off. So that's a very simple setup. It's universal power, so you can go on vacation anywhere in the world and still, you know, wherever there's a...
And also no separate transformers, which is nice.
Absolutely, yeah. And for the professional guys, this makes a huge difference because, you know, I have a lot of famous guitar players by now buying my amp because they have to fly. They do a lot of fly gigs, and it's so expensive to get tube amps shipped over to Europe for the American guys or wherever. And you know, this goes into your in gig bag if you want, or in your suitcase. So there's universal power. You have the classic features of a standard guitar amp, which means effects loop. The effects loop can be switched from serial to parallel. Some effects need serial.
Yeah.
Others can use parallel. I like parallel because then it's the best punch. On the bottom there's a little hole, and you have a push-push switch that changes the sensitivity of the effects loop.
To suit individual types of pedals?
Yeah, I'm a vintage freak, not only playing vintage guitars, I love vintage gear, and like my beloved Boss DD2 pedal, delay pedal, can't handle too much level. So I've done this switch for myself.
Right.
And yeah, then there's a recording out which is also a headphones out at the same time. This is using an analog speaker emulation. Is as far as I think it's possible in the analog world. I experimented a lot with speaker emulations in the past and on this unit as well. So this is what can be done in the analog world, and you plug into any mixing console for live, and you will have a very decent sound. Like there's a resonance, self-resonating filter for the low end, which I like a lot, because you know in a lot of pub situations you have a PA system with not the tightest bass.
No.
And then if you want some bass, and if the speaker emulation is not too good, you have a lot of rumble with no definition. But you know, I'm a rock guitar player, I want some bass, I want a tight low end, and so this filter makes a good job on this side. And yeah, these are the two speaker outputs.
Yep.
And there's 8 and 16 ohms. You should be careful with any other loads. I mean, more is never a problem, but less could be.
Right.
And like if you have 4 ohms only, which is not so much the case in the UK, but the Americans do that, this amp can make more than 150 watts. And then there is a protection circuit that will shut it down to protect itself. And this would be a cut in audio. So make sure you have a proper load here, which is 16 to 16 or 8 ohms, and anything is totally safe. And if you do have, there's not even a 4 ohm speaker for guitar. Sometimes people use 2 8 ohms, and then you should use them in series and have them in 16. So it's possible. And this little socket here says remote and MIDI 1 and foot switch here. So it actually has 3 functionalities. One is a standard foot switch, like a double foot switch, that replaces or will do the same job as these two. One is channel and the other one is boost. And MIDI, I have my own MIDI adapter that goes into here, and it has a MIDI input then, and the AMP1 will recognize this adapter, and then the software of AMP1, it actually does have software, not for sound, only for control, will recognize the adapter, and then the boost switch will be a MIDI learn.
Right.
So if you don't have the adapter, you will never notice anything, but if you do have the adapter, if you hold the boost for a long time, this will be MIDI learn and will memorize settings of the AMP1 with the incoming program change numbers. So MIDI is possible, and remote, well, there's a BluGuitar remote 1 pedal foot controller, heavy duty with 10 switches and 9 presets, because I don't believe it bangs. It does bangs, but I wanted 9 presets per bank. So there's many. And this remote 1 pedal gives you first direct to access to all the channels, boost, reverb, effects loop, and you have a master volume that you can program. You can even program the gain, everything into the pedal. And another functionality is a power soak. Okay, it's built into here, but it's controlled via the remote 1. So back to the philosophy, is this by itself is already a very powerful unit, and it does probably 95% of what you really need, and the rest is fun. And this can be done with a remote 1 or via MIDI and any system that controls it. So there's many options. And this is a little recess, so if you put it on a cabinet with a handle, it will not fall off. My prototypes did though. Yeah, that's I forgot this. There's a noise gate built in. The unit itself is not noisy. It's as noisy as any other tube amp or analog amp. And the middle position is off, and the soft position works pretty fine because it analyzes the input signal and the output signal of each preamp. And so the trigger for the noise gate is kind of sensitive. If you have a pedal on your pedal board, it's tricky to get a good threshold for the noise gate. But it was so easy to build this into this AMP1, so I thought it makes sense to have it here. And the other setting here is the metal. Metal is nothing for me, but it's for the guys who want tight riffs, and this noise gate really makes it dry and tight, and so you have the option there too. And talking about tubes, here in the middle you see the so-called nanotube. It's a Russian sub-miniature tube that I've chosen with my Russian designer. Well, I made a concept, but I met this crazy Russian guy from Moscow, and I'm in the industry for quite a while, and you know, sometimes you meet these guys and they show you another tube screamer and say, oh, boring, you know, not again. You know, and I've got already 5 clones. But this guy had something, and I gave him a task, and he came back, you know, half a year later or maybe even a year, and he finally managed that, you know. And this was something I knew it's not easy for a guy. And this was the starting point for me doing this amp with this guy.
Right.
I knew this guy had the knowledge to go there, and we were looking for tubes, different style, and this is like the kind of last generation of Russian tube designs, and so they are super strong. They are even soldered to the PCB, so you will break a lot of things on this amp, but not the tube. So,
well, that is a very in-depth run through the AMP1, which has been very enjoyable, particularly for me as I'm a user as well. It'd be nice to hear some tones, I think.
Sure. Well, this is my favorite sound. Maybe first I use the vintage channel on this here, behind me, and I love to use the volume control on the guitar. So if I play low, it's kind of more clean. And when I crank it, I get some overdrive. Sounds, and this is the next one is the classic,
right,
which gives it more. Still cleans
up, yeah.
And there's one more overdrive, which is the modern, and then still talk. Okay, it's that low of volume where we are at. And last but not least, the clean channel. Yeah.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Thomas, for coming along and visiting us at Intersound today, and we look forward to our event this evening and have some more fun.